In the fields of the North Korean countryside early in the morning, one can see people moving toward the furrows with their tools, and this scene is often filmed by national television, which overlays everyday life with narratives about collective labor for the good of the fatherland. The arrangement of fields and terraces blends into the landscape of mountains and valleys, and the roads linking villages are often narrow and stony, so the transport of harvests relies on carts, bicycles, and the occasional decades-old tractors that run despite missing parts. In households, aside from portraits of leaders hanging above stoves, residents seek respite in small home gardens where they grow vegetables and herbs to supplement the food rations provided by the state. The rhythm of the year is set by sowing, tending, and harvesting, and families involve children in field work, creating daily rituals and teaching responsibility for the plot, although yields are often uneven because of limited access to fertilizers. In many villages, new investments promoted in state materials such as apartment blocks and public halls can be seen. Yet local residents often speak of empty facilities and difficulties in actually benefiting from the promised modernization. Agricultural organization still rests on cooperatives in which individual efforts are woven into a system of planned norms, and local leaders tally tasks and labor allocations, frequently blurring the line between personal will and obligation. In winter, villages turn into zones of silence as roads freeze and coal and wood become the most precious resources, and families rely on stocks and ingenuity to heat rooms and protect food from the frost. The flow of information between town and countryside is limited, so remote regions receive news mainly through local authorities who interpret central directives according to local conditions, creating adaptive practices. Some border areas feel the influence of informal trade with the neighboring country, which gives rise to a quiet market for the exchange of goods and help in circumventing shortages. And this gray sector is at once a source of tension and a lifeline for many families. Women on farms combine domestic duties with fieldwork and animal care, and their endurance is sometimes celebrated in local songs that both reinforce community identity and pass traditions between generations. Young people have limited opportunities to migrate or pursue further education away from home, which often leads them to remain in rural areas, continue family traditions, or work in local workshops. Public buildings such as community centers and canteens integrate the community through gatherings, inspections, and mass events that demonstrate unity, although private, everyday hardships often remain invisible. Rivers and small lakes around the villages are places for fishing, irrigation, and recreation. Fishermen use traditional nets and portable traps, and their work supplements diets and local exchange of goods, especially in seasons when harvests are meager. A decline in the availability of fertilizers and fuels leads to a return to traditional methods, and farmers use plant waste and compost in an effort to maintain soil fertility naturally despite the lack of modern inputs. Local stories recall weather disasters and floods that destroy year-round stocks, forcing communities into mutual aid and improvisation, and these memories become part of a narrative of survival and the need to be ready for the next season. The presence of officials and patrols affects the rituals of daily life because checks and inspections set behavioral norms and at the same time mobilize residents to display the best aspects of their work to meet standards. Around central villages, smaller homesteads and settlements arise where animals are raised, and the local food culture relies on what the land provides as well as on home preserves and craft methods of obtaining food. Rural schools remain places of education and upbringing where pupils learn both academic subjects and the basics of practical agriculture, and teachers often combine the role of educator with that of organizer of local social initiatives. Although propaganda displays spectacular yields and modern solutions, visitors' photographs and travelers' accounts often reveal a contrast between the official message and the reality of farms, creating a complex picture of rural normality. An important phenomenon is the seasonality of communal labor when whole communities engage in harvesting and accelerated sowing, which is at once an attempt to meet state production plans and a requirement for the survival of family farms. Traditional crafts and home workshops supplement incomes because in small villages tools are made, equipment is repaired, and local products are produced that flow indirectly into exchange markets, feeding informal trade networks. Local power stations and the electricity grid are often unstable, so families organize life around hours of power availability, and irregular supply affects the drying of herbs, the operation of mills, and the ability to preserve food. The symbolism of leaders dominates public space. Posters and monuments stage celebrations and remind people of loyalty, while private conversations more often concern mundane worries and everyday problems than official slogans. Controlled tourism and delegation visits present a fragmentary image of the province because guests are led along selected routes where tidy sections and fresh investments are meant to create a model picture of the region. Access to health care in the provinces is often limited, with a lack of specialists and innovative therapies. Therefore, traditional medicine and simple preventive treatments are commonly used in practice, and people rely on familiar local remedies.